a 20-year period from 95 to 2015, I played on like 300 albums. And so for my resume, it sounds better to say I played on 3,000 cuts because I did 10 songs per album. But the other side of that coin is...
Hey folks, Shane here with Creative Side Podcast. Got Jamie Bowes here today along with Cody, and we're just going to pick his brain. We got Casey over on producing over there. Folks, how are you guys doing today?
Better than average.
Better than average.
Yeah.
Good. Good deal.
Doing great.
What about it, Cody?
Doing good. Yeah.
So we got Jamie here today, and Jamie is a very talented musician. He's been around the music scene for a long time. Jamie, can you just take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about you?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm 64, so if I gave you the whole story, it'd take up 5 or 6 podcasts, but I'm trying to just hit the high parts. I was exposed to music early on. Mom had me playing Twinkle Twinkle before I was 4, and that was on piano, of course. Dad is a bass player, or was. He worked with the Happy Goodman family for a while, so there was that exposure to the professional end of it, watching him play with them. High school, I was immersed in music. Chorus first period, band last period, music theory in the middle of the day. So half of my time at school was not even anywhere but the music wing. In 8th grade, I was probably just as interested in art, drawing and things like that as I was music. But I kind of picked a path when I went to 9th grade.
So when you started playing, obviously you just said piano. I know you were a bass player too.
Actually, I didn't have the opportunity to play keyboards in a band until 4 or 5 years into my career. I was playing bass.
Playing bass. Because I remember back in the day knowing you as a bass player, and then a little later as, a keyboard player.
Right.
But getting that opportunity to get on keys, it took a little bit of time.
I had I started playing keys before I ever started picking up Dad's bass, which was about age 8. Of course, I was lucky enough to grow up on a great bass. It's a 65 Fender Jazz. Oh, wow. He bought it new at Hughley's in Nashville in 66.
Wow.
And it was under the bed, and it was gorgeous. And he said, "Do you want to play that? You got to play this." And he showed me Betsy. Betsy was a 150-year-old family upright that I had to stand on the edge of his bed to reach the top of the neck.
Oh, wow.
So that built strength and stretch and gave me a real fundamental foundation in what bass really was. Because you can't really play fancy licks on an upright, especially when you're 8. But it teaches you the rudiments. He'd put on a stack of records, Jim Reeves, Eddie Arnold, very, very simple arrangements that taught me the simple part of playing bass. And that Dad being a bass player, he started passing me some of his gigs that he didn't feel up to going and doing, because his day gig was working just down the street here at that Southern Bell. So a lot of times, by the time I was old enough to go play in some bars, he didn't feel like it. So he kind of passed me his scraps. And that's what got me into playing live, out for a living. Joined a group in Bowling Green in 84. They needed a keyboard player, and I didn't even have anything to play it on. So I rented Fender Rhodes from a friend of theirs for about 6 months. But Surefire turned out to be a real a highway into Nashville. We had 3 records in Billboard in 87, 88, or 88 and 89. About in the middle of the chart, middle of the country chart.
Wow. Surefire was the band?
The band from Bowling Green.
Band from Bowling Green.
4-piece group. Alan Borders on drums, Bill Sacre on guitar, Steve Wood on bass, and me on keys.
Yeah. Nice.
The first single was called Roll the Dice. No, excuse me, Roll the Dice was the second single. First single was Bringing the House Down. You can find that on YouTube. Surefire, Surefire.
Yeah.
That opened some doors to me on Music Row.
So once you got into the music scene in Nashville, and probably all over the place, I don't know where all you've played at, but I know earlier you were talking about some different places that you've played and different things like that. You were well, I kind of drawed a blank there, but you were talking about Broadway, some things in Broadway that you talking about Broadway in Nashville,
right? Lower Broadway.
Okay, I was like, when you said that, I was thinking like Broadway in New York.
No, I don't read well enough to work there.
Yeah, so
never needed to actually.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of places to play in Broadway there, and so you done that scene, but you also done a lot of work in the studio. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Actually, that was probably 80% of my experience since I moved to Nashville in '85 was recording stuff. And in the 20-year period from 95 to 2015, I played on like 300 albums. And so from my resume, it sounds better to say I played on 3,000 cuts because I did 10 songs per album. But the other side of that coin is the budget for recordings, for custom sessions got so low that I was doing $100 albums. Come in for a tracking day and do 10, 11 songs for $100.
Wow.
And I'm not complaining. It's better than not working.
Right.
And the other side of that coin is some of my customers, like this sweet little old lady from Iowa or somewhere that came in her heart's desire was always to come to Nashville and do an album of songs she'd written. They were actually pretty doggone good. But it occurred to me after that fact, I was grumbling about only making $100 an album. And the Lord said to me, Jamie, if you weren't that cheap, she couldn't afford you.
Right.
I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Made me feel better about what I was making. And it made sense.
That comes back to what we were talking about in the last episode about, small churches, and they're trying to graduate to another level, but they don't have the money to go and spend, they don't have the money for a tech team to do all that kind of stuff or whatever. And everybody's at their own level. And, and there's somebody on the production side that's serving their level too. That's kind of the way I like to look at myself. But
I got a little story that might shed some light on that. Work with what you got. And there was a Christmas once at a church in Germany where the pipe organ was broken. They needed some kind of music for their midnight mass. So a guy wrote a song that could be played on guitar, and it was Silent Night. Oh. To me, Silent Night on an acoustic guitar is the simplest, purest of all the Christmas songs you'll ever hear. So don't let the limitations of technology or funding or even the knowledge of how to run this stuff get in the way of your willingness to go ahead and do some. And that applies to every art form that I could think of. If you want to be an artist and you can't afford oil paints, draw. Right. Draw with a pencil. Draw with pen and ink. Just do your crafts, do your skill, and the more you do it, the better you'll get, and maybe eventually afford better toys and tools.
Right.
But I see a lot of people that are saying, man, if I just had such and such a plug-in for my digital audio workstation, then I could make great records.
Well, that is so interesting because I know you come from the days of very much analog as well as I did as well. And now everything is kind of changed. And if you're into the tech side of it, with all the plugins and different things, we're getting a train again. Do you guys hear it? I don't know if they can hear it on the live feed, but probably they are.
That's fine.
Anyway,
I kind of like it.
I do too. It's like goes by and But now, being in the analog days where you guys, and I know you've got a lot of experience being behind the console too, in working some of these compressors and limiters and gates and all that stuff the analog way, where a lot of people today, obviously it's all in
the box.
It's all in a box, and and all that stuff's there. And
there was an advantage to a 15-foot wide console. If I heard something going on the hi-hat channel, There it is. There it is. There's a knob there's 4 knobs dedicated to the frequencies to adjust the EQ, equalization for people that don't know, that I can tweak it at a moment's notice and it's fixed. And I'm not real comfortable with going through 2 or 3 pages of menus to get to what that does on a digital audio workstation. I'm still not real comfy with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I haven't had the need to get that way really.
Well, it's interesting because all the apps and plugins for audio, it's funny because they all are striving to emulate analog.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that's missing in music production right now, because of the new technology versus the old, is we're making records a layer at a time. At the very most, you'll bring in a 3-person tracking team, bass, drums, guitar.
Yeah.
And catch that and then add to it, add layers to it. You'll bring in somebody else later for steel guitar if you need it, or fiddle, or even the lead guitar player is not there on tracking day. The tracking team has to pre-plan for what they can't even hear yet. Leave holes, leave room, play something simple and vanilla that won't interfere with their ability to add something later. And the best of us can do that, and it comes out okay.
Right.
But it's still nothing like 7 guys in the room on tracking day reacting to each other in real time.
Yeah.
The cooperation of that old school way of cutting records gave it an organic synergy.
Right.
That we don't hear today.
Yep.
And won't. And in fact, we're so limited and locked to a doggone tempo of click track.
Yeah.
That the records don't breathe.
Right.
Tempo should vary just like your heart rate varies. Mood changes your heart rate. Why shouldn't it change tempo?
Right.
It does in classical music. Try and put a click track to a classical cut from like New York Philharmonic. Good luck.
Really?
Yeah. It would really stink if they did have to play to a click track.
Yeah. And that's so interesting to hear that because, for me, where I'm at, I'm always driving to the click.
The technology insists.
It insists that. Yeah.
It really does.
And you said something about making room, and that's one of the things that is really challenging every day or every time I mix live music is getting everything in their right place. I know we're getting into some technical stuff here, and we want to
philosophical. It's not actually nuts and bolts of the operation of the gear.
I mean, we want to get on into talking about your life and where you came from and a little bit more. But man, Cody, me and this guy right here, we can talk about this stuff all the time.
Sure.
I mean, we could just set 3 or 4 hours because he's seen it, he's done it, and a lot of things I'm discovering he's already done. And I'll call him up and I'm like, hey man, I am mixing this band and I just can't get the bass track to resonate and stay in the mix, and he's like, and he's got like 7 different things that, he can give me help on to kind of look for. And it's so beautiful because you got a guy that's been in Nashville, worked in the studio in Nashville, that I can just pick up the phone, lives right down the road from me, and we can get together and talk about those things.
Yeah, that's so good. I really love hearing the stories that you're saying. You're talking about the way the old school versus the new school, organic and whatnot. And I'm very, I'd say illiterate, especially compared to you two, your all's experience. But for a person who knows very little, I can understand what y'all are saying. It's really good because I love music. I wish I knew how to create music. I wish I knew how to get music out of my head, through my fingers. But this is really cool. I'm really enjoying this time right here.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's beneficial to you. If it's beneficial to you, it'll be beneficial to whoever's watching.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Jamie, talk a little bit more about maybe, an experience or two that maybe over the years as we, you talked a little bit about how you got started and now that you've gotten a little older, maybe you got something you reflect on and share a story with us. And
well, when I got to Nashville, I was kind of cocky. I
Really?
kind of thought I knew it all or knew all I needed to. And listening back to on records, there was an album that I was fortunate enough to produce when I was 27, maybe. A guy named Ray Lynch from California, Long Beach, that came and he heard a song that I'd written at a writer's night, and he said, "Can I cut that?" I said, "Sure, if you let me produce." 27, just got to town. And he said, "Okay." So guess what? We produced it, and it actually hit Cashbox chart. But that's rather trivial. The point was that when I listen back to it now, I hear an awful lot of sophomoric mistakes, overproduction that was unnecessary and maybe. But I learned through time that less definitely really is more.
Oh my gosh.
Not just in production, but in use of the tools and the toys. You could put so many plugins on something that it mangles what was perfect. It's, to me, the best advice I ever got was from a guy named Steve Chandler that used to mix just down the road at Goodman's studio. Now he's working in Nashville at places that, Ricky Skaggs is a client, number of clients that you'd know the name of. But Steve said, catch it hot, clean, and dry.
Yeah.
Take a good mic in the right place on a good instrument with a good player, and then mostly leave it alone. And so my idea on effects or compression or tone control, which is a more generic term for equalization or EQ, is it's like plastic surgery. If they can see you did it wrong.
Yeah.
So a light hand. Every time I go to use an EQ and I boost it 3-4 dB and I said, "Hey, that sounds nice." I go, "Well, but would 2 work?" And if I back it to 2 and it's still better, then I'm probably better off leaving it that way.
I totally agree with you. And I, as I've got not nearly at the level you are on that kind of stuff, but over the years I've gotten better and better. And, I tell the team that I work with at our church, hey, less is more. Yeah. And really not just from a mixing standpoint, but from every element. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a bass player, and you like to hit a run on every single song and, right. And all of a sudden you're muddying this thing up where it just really needed a nice sustained drive.
Sure.
And same thing on guitar. So, less is do the minimum. And, as I've incorporated that into my mixing, I've got better.
Good. I've noticed that.
I've gotten better.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
You've got a good ear.
I hope so.
Well, I see you unhappy with something that I'm already unhappy with, but I don't even have to tell you.
Yeah.
And well, like you were talking about learning some of the tricks of the trade. I was freely given tricks of the trade from old school guys, so I'm freely distributed. I'm glad to share them.
Yeah.
I don't mind that a bit. So anything I can do to help and give a perspective to somebody that doesn't have the experience, if they're listening,
right.
If they're not, I'm not going to waste my breath because it would be actually doing them no favor.
Right.
It'd be like trying to teach a pig to dance. Ticks off the pig and it annoys the teacher. But as far as perfect example of that, Gene Breeden was a major mentor of mine. His studio was where I did the majority of my work for 30 years. And I was his first call piano player. And he had a plaque over the window between the control room and the studio, one of those, the wooden plaque that somebody's engraved letters in or burn them in, whichever. And it was just initials. It said TMYFWI TMIFW. And the clean version of that is the more you fiddle with it, the more it's fiddled with.
Right.
So that was really a touchstone for making sure that I didn't work a song to death. You can work it till you've worked the life out of it. You could cut a song 10 times, and maybe the least perfect, but the most emotionally impactful was the second cut.
Right.
So just keep in mind that the purpose is not perfection. The purpose is effectiveness. on a record or on any kind of art. A cooperation, especially if you're in a room, in a collaborative thing like a band. It ain't about your instrument sounding the best it could sound. It ain't about your notes all being perfect. It's about, did I contribute to the song? Is the song better off for what I did?
Right.
And that selflessness enables the collaboration or the cooperation that makes a band work in the first place. And I'm talking about beginner garage bands even.
Right.
Y'all listen to each other and make sure the song is your focus. If not, you're doing it wrong.
And I say that a lot. I'm obviously into Christian music and stuff, and and I've been known to say, let's try to serve the song, because the writer that wrote this song, it's in my mind, well, probably any song, but when you've got a Christian song and they were inspired to write this song, and they wrote it a certain way for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that we need to play it exactly note for note identical,
no,
but we need to hang on to the major parts of that song and try to replicate,
right,
fairly closely, because that's the way it's impactful.
The sweet old lady I mentioned a while ago that had a dozen gospel songs and came to Nashville, the best thing she could have done is what she did, which was kind of let us go ahead and mess with her song. Because that certainly, when she was standing in the control room listening back to the first song, it was nothing like she'd imagined on the drive down. But she was standing there looking through the glass, and I saw tears start to well up in both eyes. I said, "You okay, honey?" She said, "I never imagined." I said, "Never imagined." She said, "I never imagined it could turn out like this." She didn't hear it in her head. Mm-hmm. She was flexible enough to let us embellish or accentuate what was good about the song. Had we just gone on our own way and made us sound good and it stepped on what was good about the song, that would have been wrong. But there's a balance there. She was flexible enough to let us, because I've been over micromanaged by guys that came in and thought they could tell me exactly what to play. You hired pros for a reason. Let them be pros.
Right.
Don't hog time with micromanagement. That's just advice for anybody who goes to Nashville and wants to make a record.
Well, in songwriters, and they, that is their baby. The songwriters.
I get it, because I'm a songwriter too.
Yeah,
I'm an ASCAP writer.
The ones that I know, they, like, you've worked with my sister before, sure, and she's a pretty good songwriter, but they hold that stuff close. It's so personal.
Sure.
And, I've told my sister, I said, "Hey, I know you got some songs. Let's, come up in the studio and let's work on them." And she's apprehensive because there's just something personal about it. Yeah. And, whenever you have it's like, that's your baby. And if somebody says something about your baby, oh my gosh, it's bad.
I'm sure writers run into that when they're dealing with an editor at a publishing company. Not songwriters, but literary writers.
Well, it's the same thing with, like, me and Cody. If we're working on a project, or he's worked on a video project, or me, I usually always bounce it to him. "Hey man, what do you think?"
Good.
You're not going to hurt my feelings. Tell me, even though it hurts my feelings, but no. But
if it does, then bless you for letting.
Yeah. Because you're going to learn something. Ain't that right, Casey? You ain't said anything over there. You probably got a couple
enjoying
questions.
The conversation, but for me, I do also write songs. But what I found, it's hard for me to accept the criticism, especially if I think those words came from the Holy Spirit.
And they probably did.
Yeah.
It's just so personal.
Yeah.
And I get that way too, Casey, with my videos. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I really want everybody to love it. And if somebody says something about it, it's kind of like, but you got to be able to take that and say, you know what? Because, sometimes somebody's got something and they're like, "Dude, you were spot on that." And I was blinded. I couldn't see that, but I see that now, and it makes me better. Do you ever have that?
Wait to read one of your books, honey. I really look forward to that.
Well, she's got a children's book that we we got for our grandkids. We keep a lot of books and stuff like that. And Serena will pick up kids' books. So we got her kids' book at our house.
I'll next time I'm over visiting, I'll pull
You
that out.
need to read it. Yeah.
I really love and just hearing what you have to say. It's just what you're talking about. You have the vision. You've got something that's an expression of your heart. It's deeply rooted within, and then handing it over for someone to make it, come to life. And
it's a sacrifice. I recognize that it's hard to let go.
Mm-hmm.
As you were saying, it's your baby.
Yeah.
It's your baby. Especially the better it is, the less you want anybody to mess with it.
Yeah. You mentioned something. What is it? You served the song. What was your words that you said? It's not about, hey, let me come in and it's all about my vocals, or it's all about me playing the drums. No, it's about serving the song. What was the word?
It's the selflessness. It's the collaboration or cooperation. Yeah. We got a saying in Nashville amongst session pros, you leave your ego at the door. You better, because if you're seeking the best result than what anybody else in the team thinks of what you just did, they need to be free to express, hey man, you ought to try such and such. And if they don't feel free to do that, they won't. So you'll just remain unimproved. That's on you. But it is about changing your focus of self-absorption of what did I sound like on this record as did I help the record? Yeah. And if I don't care if I played something that fit perfectly, if it sounds just as good or better with that track muted, I got in the way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think music is a language. The sound of notes is a language. I can wiggle my fingers and make pretty sounds come out of a speaker box. But what good is that if it doesn't? 1 Corinthians 12. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. And it may be the prettiest sounding brass and tinkling cymbal you've heard in a while, but if it doesn't mean anything, what's the purpose in it? And I learned that early on in this business, that it ain't about anything trivial like, gee, didn't I sound good when I played that part? Right. It's about what's the future in it? What are we accomplishing with this? And supporting the emotional impact of a good lyric without getting in the way of it is part of the trick of making records.
So what I'm hearing is this song going to leave a legacy?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Will it have any kind of impact?
Yeah.
I've played a lot of bars before I got the opportunity to be playing in studios, a lot of bars. I was in a different state every week for a good while, staying in some of the seediest motels you'd ever find. I've learned how to bring a pair of flip-flops for the shower, and that was, as a Christian, that was kind of like volunteering to go into recon behind enemy lines. And believe me, I didn't come out of there smelling clean. Smoke got on me.
For sure. In
a figurative sense. After my first wife died of cancer, I spent a good while diving into a Southern Comfort bottle for comfort. If anybody wants to know whether that's scriptural, they need to read Proverbs 31. There's a purpose for alcohol. It's an emotional painkiller. Let him who is perishing, let him drink and remember his misery no more. Now, better that you find a way to not be perishing. Right. But, and I was lucky enough to have brothers that I was working with. The bass player, Steve Wood, came to me after a break, on like a second or third break, said, Jamie, everyone in the band knows why you're drinking. We know why you're hurting, but this dog ain't going to hunt. You're messing up. And it woke me up, and I quit drinking heavily at that point.
Right.
I didn't quit drinking alcohol ever yet, but it's no longer a demon that has any control over me. I don't keep anything at the house because I don't crave it. I don't want it. I don't need it.
Right.
I will drink socially with a friend.
Sure.
I still enjoy the taste of a good bourbon.
Yeah.
But I think it's called, like Paul told Timothy, Timothy, take a little wine for your stomach's sake. Now, back then, everybody drank wine. Everybody, children at meal times would drink wine. So why did he feel necessary to tell Timothy, go ahead and, I think he had sworn off it because it was a demon he had to defeat. And his spiritual mentor, Paul, recognized that he'd grown past that and was now free to go ahead and use it sparingly in moderation.
Right.
And so a lot of things that people consider sins is because they've done it to excess and it became a sin.
Right.
Eating works that way.
Yeah, I've got the problem with that one.
Bless you. I'll pray for it. You pray for my nicotine addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine being in that scene, all those years, like you said, you're going to go into places and you're going to get dirty.
Sure.
I mean, and
you don't have to, but you probably will.
You're in a scenario where you're vulnerable.
Sure.
I mean, Cody, you can probably speak to that. I mean, I know a little bit of your history, and I'm not sure Jamie knows any of your history, but,
for me, I mentioned in our first episode that, I'm just over 4 years sober, 48 years old, and most of my life have been in active addiction, in and out of jails, homeless, and couch surfing, abandoned buildings, underneath bridges, you name it,
Amazing what you can get comfortable with. Ain't it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, I had an encounter with Jesus when I was incarcerated. God had to take me out of a situation, and I just really came to myself, and I'm like, God, who are you? And he revealed himself to me in a mighty way.
I'm glad.
However, this was some years ago. I got out, and I just ended up going right back out because I just didn't have the environment that would help me grow. And I had also mentioned about the nonprofit ministry that we're starting. But anyways, for me, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
Amen to that.
Amen.
So for me, it would be permissible to go into a bar, but would it be beneficial? I think it's all along with the motive as well. Like if I know that there is someone in there and hey, someone's calling me, it's like, I know they're in this bar. I need you to come help me talk them off the ledge or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just because I have found myself saying like the same thing. It's okay. I can do this, and end up getting burnt.
Yeah, we do.
By doing
it. We sure do. Because we're fallible.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're fallible.
Yeah. Let's do this, guys. We're running at the end of our time. Can you hang around, and we'll go into the next episode, and we will start diving into that a little bit more. And I want to hear a little bit more, more up to date now with you and what you're doing in music and stuff like that. Different things like that. So guys, if you're watching this podcast today, and make sure you like, subscribe, and hang around for the episode 4, where Jamie's going to talk a little bit more about what he's doing today and the creative elements and things like that. So we'll see you on the next episode.